So we're not really going to be using NetBeans too much here, but I do want to illustrate what's going to happen. So we're going to just take a look here. We're going to call this conversions. And now that you've started using them, you might have run into this problem. Like for example, I can do like int value equals 3. But if I tell Java that I want 3.5, I'm going to get an error here. I should get an error here. Ah, there it finally is. So the reason is Java's saying, hey, you're going to lose data here because you're trying to put a decimal where an integer is. So this is going to be about what happens when we mix things up in Java. How do you go and say to Java, I do mean to lose data? Well, you have to do something called casting. So by putting the integer in brackets in front, that tells Java that you actually mean to chop the decimal off of this. Okay? So for example, you might have a program where you say double, let's go like this. Let's say we're going to use int cost equals 12. Let's say it's $12. Int money equals, let's say you have $50. And you're going to keep track of how many pizzas you can buy. So that's the amount of money you have divided by the cost. And I'll go system.out.println, and we can see the pizzas. So in this case, it says 4 pizzas, but we can actually do better than that. How do I tell Java that I actually mean to make this thing into a double? Well, one way you can do it is to go like this. But it's not going to change the result. It's still 4. The problem is the calculation happens here, and then I told Java to convert the whole thing into a double. So what I need to do instead is I need to use Java's rules for numbers, which say if one of them has decimals, everybody else in the calculation keeps decimals. The only time you lose decimals is if both are integers. So if I make any one of these into a double, now I get the fractional part of the pizza. Same thing if I do it over here. Now I get the fractional part. And of course you could do it to both. It'll still work if we do that. Now one of the most common mistakes I see students make is they do this in their formula, one of their volumes one. Let's do something like 4/3 times pi times 5. And they tell me that this is supposed to be the volume here. And yeah, oops, sorry, I'm printing the wrong thing. And yeah, you've done some Java there, but you don't actually have what we were looking for. Because 4 divided by 3, this is 1. So in Java, that's 1. You're going to get a different answer now if I do 4 divided by 3.0. See, now it's almost 21, when before this one was 15.7. So significant difference, 30% more. So what you have to be careful of then is how you manage your numbers and your data types. The way you cast and get away from this is you tell Java, oh, I actually mean for you to treat this integer like a double. Okay. And now we're okay. So be careful about how that happens. And there are times when you do want to toss the values away, right? Like you might say, maybe money you decided to do as a double because you've got like $50.75. Then with pizzas, let's say you can't order, like you can't call up Domino's and say I'd like 5.5 pizzas. They'll tell you you can't do that. And Java is saying that we can't do this because what's going to happen, let me just fix these errors here, is cost is an integer, money is a double. So when you put them together, that's a decimal and an integer. So decimal plus anything, the result is a decimal, but I can't put a decimal in here. So we have to tell Java, oh, okay, you know what, Java, this is fine. Just convert this. Sorry, I have an integer. Convert this whole thing into an integer when you're done. So that way it's going to do the calculation, and then it's going to convert it to an integer. Okay? So if I do this, now I get 4. Now be careful, this is not the same thing. If I go like this, it may turn out in this question, and in fact it will, that it's the same thing. But what that's going to do is first it's going to hack this down, and it's going to make that into 50. Then it's going to do the division. Casting always comes first in the order of operations. So that will happen. Then the whatever's operations have to go will go after it. So you want that to proceed the way it was, and then you're telling Java, yes, now please chop off the decimal. I just want you to store in the whole number of pizzas. So we're going to just try a couple here, and I'll show you how it works. So I'm going to go and just grab a good old-fashioned Word document. And I'll use a really big font so you can see it happening here. So let's do, I don't know, 48. Maybe too big. Okay, so let's just say this time that I was going to do something like int a equals 5, int b equals 15, int c equals 12, and double, let's call this one e. I know they're not the greatest numbers, but let's make it in 6, sure. Double f equals 18, and double g equals 20. Okay. So now if I wanted to do something in Java, like for example system.out.println, and I wanted to show you what's a divided by g going to be. Okay. So the rules go like this. Right now I have an integer and I have a double here. So one of them is a decimal. The whole thing becomes a decimal when it's done. So I'll take the calculator. It's just going to be the decimal form, which is 5 divided by 20, which is 0.25. Okay. So that's what I'd have here, 0.25. Now, we can make this a little more challenging though and figure out what Java is actually doing. What if I was to cast this to a double and I was to, let's see here, make this go divided by c? What would that do? Well, I want to see step by step how you work through this. So the order of operations says, right now I'm trying to come up with, I'll put their values in. It's 5 and c is 12. So 5 over 12. So the first step is Java is going to go like this. And it's going to do casting first. Then once it's done the casting, it uses the rule. 1 is a decimal, so result is a decimal. So that means I just get to use my calculator. And I have 5 divided by 12, it'd be 0.416 or 0.417. Okay. Okay, so let me cut this out then. Let's do something like this. We'll cast to an integer now. Let's cast the integer of e. Let's go g divided by e. So if I wanted to see that you understand what Java is doing, I'd expect you to go like this, and you'd put in the g for 20. You can put the 0 in there just so that I know and you know that it's a decimal, or a double rather. And it's going to say, oh, there's a set of brackets in there. So it's going to say, do this here first. So that'll be 20 divided by 6, which is 3.333. Okay, so then doing that, Java will chop off the decimal and I end up with just a 3. Okay, but I can also change the order in which I make these things ints. This time if I get rid of those brackets and we trace it through, Java's going to go like this. I have an integer that I have to cast, and these are the numbers I'm starting with. So first thing Java is going to do is chop off that decimal, and now it's going to use its rules that says, well, one of them's a decimal, so they're all going to have a decimal. So the answer this time is going to be 3.33333 because there's no more cast to make, and this one's a decimal, so the answer has to have a decimal in it. So this is typically something students want to talk more about, so I'm sure we're going to be working on this in the lab. But the assignment I have for you is a print one, and I want to actually see in print, I want to see your steps like I've shown you here, that you can walk through and trace them. Again, the reason why is people end up with funny errors when they don't understand casting, especially like I was saying in the volume of a sphere, right? 4 divided by 3, that's 1 according to Java. Java didn't make a mistake, you did there. So when we take a look, your print assignment looks like this. They're exercises out of your textbook, and I want to see you walk through. These are the given numbers, and you'll have a calculator. Walk through the conversions so I can see that you understand how Java does casting, and also that I can see you still understand how to do the remainder. Okay, so this is a print assignment I'll have available for you, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more as we go through